Yeah, so articleOne is an AI native policy intelligence platform. As a staffer, and I think any of your listeners will be familiar with this, I was working basically 3 or 4 jobs at once. And if I could reduce that to like 2 or 3 jobs, it would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Do it. There's never been a better time to do it, first of all. AI has made entry into spaces that you may either be intimately familiar with but not quite sure where to go next, or you may be sort of on the periphery and have some basic familiarity with it but need to learn a lot more to be considered an entrepreneur or an expert in that field, and I would just say go for it. But I would absolutely recommend it. I would make sure that, get your annual wellness check beforehand, because you're going to be eating a lot of cheeseburgers.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Capital Spotlight. Today we're here with Jackson Tufts, founder of articleOne. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get to where you're at now? Where are you from originally, and kind of how'd you get here?
Yeah, I'm originally from North Carolina. Cool. Grew up outside of Chapel Hill and lived my young life in the Chapel Hill and Durham area. And then went to college after school in Colorado. I knew that I wanted to do something in the policy space, and went to work on a political campaign in Iowa for 9 months, which was a lot of fun. Nice. Maybe if I were younger, I would love to relive that experience.
No, it was John Edwards?
That was cool. John Edwards for president, 2008.
Cool.
So it was a good transition out of college. Campaign lifestyle is not unlike a college lifestyle. But after doing that and the campaign ended, I went home, sort of reset myself, and had a good friend of mine who worked for my hometown Congressman David Price, who's since retired. And she mentioned that there was an opportunity, an opening as a staff assistant. And so I said, well, this seems perfect. Let me apply and interview, and the rest is history. I was very fortunate and worked with Mr. Price for almost 8 years.
Nice, that's great.
Yeah, really an awesome experience, and one that I would not have traded for anything.
So how'd you, after that, is that when you started articleOne, or where in that process? You leave the Hill, what comes next?
Yeah, a few intervening things.
Okay.
I left the Hill, went to graduate school, got my master's, public policy. Cool. And then came back up and worked as a defense contractor for 4 years, focused on weapons of mass destruction, non-proliferation.
Gotcha.
So for Mr. Price, I had a variety of roles, but the last 5 or 6 of those years, I was his national security and foreign affairs advisor. So that was a natural fit for me as a transition. Really, really important work that DoD is doing in the cooperative threat reduction space. But I was eager to get a little bit closer back to policy making rather than being in a department as a contractor. And so I started freelance consulting for a number of folks that I had worked with in some capacity when I was on Capitol Hill.
Cool.
And in that, AI was emerging, and I was like, we could build tools that make this part easier. And that's what led to articleOne.
Nice. So fill us in on articleOne. Where was the initial idea? What does it become today?
Yeah, so articleOne is an AI native policy intelligence platform. And it began almost 2 years ago, actually, when I was using some of the large language models that are still in use today and are excellent for all sorts of different reasons. But there was something critical that was missing, which was I needed verifiable information. I couldn't credibly go back to my clients and say, I'm pretty sure this 5-page document is right. I needed to be sure of that. And so we established a few ground rules at the company early on. And one of those key ones was verifiable data and making sure that the veracity of the information is not questioned. Yeah. So that as your boss is running out the door to votes, you hand them something and you don't have a doubt that it surfaced from Reddit or something like that. And so over the past 2 years.
Before we go any further, I'm curious there, like, how do you accomplish that? I'm sure there's tradecraft involved that you don't want to talk about, but like, is it just like a closed source network, almost like Notebook LM, where you're pulling from certain things in particular, or how do you establish verifiable data in that process?
Well, the good news there is that over the past 20 years or so, Congress has made a concerted effort, and frankly, whole of government, federal government, has made a concerted effort to make data more open, more transparent, more available, and really clean.
Cool.
Those laws that were passed were not intended just to have a website where documents are dumped. They wanted
No.
to make them machine readable. They wanted to make them usable for data scientists in an academic setting.
Cool.
And that all worked for our
Surprising.
advantage. Yeah, I know. Congress leading on the innovation front.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not going to get into every little last step there, but we make sure that we're pulling from verified sources that we vet preliminarily. And then and AI is embedded throughout our platform. So I'm just describing one piece of it.
Yeah.
But we make sure that the data is retrieved, that it is checked, that a composition occurs to someone sends a query, they get a response. There are both inline citations, and then the sources are listed right there on the screen as well.
Nice. That's great. All right. So those are the ground rules. Where do you go from there?
Anywhere that policy people need. And we really began with making sure that if you were engaged with AI, and most people are familiar with ChatGPT or something like that, so it's sort of a chat setting, that the information you were getting back was verified. But more importantly, we also recognized that if we want to provide this tool to members and their staffs in Congress and in the private sector, on K Street, and frankly, anybody who does policy work, every Fortune 5000 company has some policy function, academics, they needed a variety of tools that would make their lives easier. As a staffer, and I think any of your listeners will be familiar with this, I was working basically 3 or 4 jobs at once, and if I could reduce that to like 2 or 3 jobs, it would have been awesome.
Yeah.
And so, as we built the platform out, we made sure to stick to a few principles, and one of them was making sure that the data is verifiable wherever it comes from. We do have the ability to connect in a variety of external data sources, custom data from our customers and our users, as well as news integrations and a variety of other sources.
Nice. That's great. What have you seen from staffers as far as like feedback or adoption on the side of AI? Like when you talk to them, when you're trying to sell people on it, do staffers seem like they're using AI consistently, or are they still kind of, figuring it out?
I mean, I think we're all figuring it out to some extent, but that's what makes it exciting. And it also is what makes it a little bit risky, especially in a place as sensitive as Congress. When we talk to congressional staff in the House or Senate, and frankly, the conversations are very similar on K Street and anywhere else, there is a lot of concern that the data is credible, that if they trust a platform with their information, they know that it's not going to be used to train models.
Yeah.
They know that it's not going to be packaged and sold to another third party who may be interested to learn pre-decisional information.
Yeah.
Those are core principles for our company.
For sure.
But it's, there is a lot of concern around AI, and I think that is warranted, and I think people are approaching it the right way. I think the House of Representatives is an excellent example of that. With HITPOL 8, House Information Technology Policy 8, the Committee on House Administration and the Modernization and Innovation Subcommittee has done outstanding work
For sure.
implementing guardrails around AI use instead of sort of policing every single last possible use case. And to your question, we talk daily with congressional staff. And if you look at the policy intelligence landscape in Congress, it's really sort of consumed by a duopoly. There are 2 big players in the policy intelligence space that are present in over 80% of House and Senate offices. And we think that means that the market is ripe for new entrants.
Yeah.
And if you look at what I would call sort of the legacy providers, the legacy tools, those that have been around for a decade or 2 decades, they're great.
And haven't been updated much.
Well, in some cases, people are sort of bolting AI onto the side, but they're going to run into a fundamental business model problem where to do that in any meaningful way, they either need to rebuild from scratch or they're going to have to raise prices on their customers, and those platforms are already really expensive.
Yeah.
So if you look at the House and Senate, AI is the one place in the policy intelligence realm that is actively growing. Everyone else is either sort of holding steady or declining modestly. But there are some gaps. And if you look, for example, in the House, the primary concentration of policy intelligence consumption is generally a little bit sort of focused on senior members, people that have been in Congress for a long time. More junior members may not be consuming much of any policy intelligence, at least other than things they find online.
Yeah.
And if that works for them, that works for them. Great. Ultimately, what we want to do is provide tools that take that working 3 jobs at once, feeling like you're a mile wide and an inch deep, where you're articulate on almost everything you need to be, but you're an expert on relatively few things. And we want to make that process less painful and free people up to spend more time on the stuff that matters, the conversations with their bosses, the conversations with counsel about crafting new legislation, being able to take that additional constituent meeting, things they don't currently have time to do.
What is like the primary use case for staffers so that they can save time?
Well, I would love to pull up the platform here, but anyone can go to our website at articleone.ai and look at the platform, get a sense of what the modules are. But in my case, we were spending a lot of time on constituent mail, which is important. It's a critical, one might argue it's the most important for any representative official to communicate with their constituents. But some of the policy research, for example, my boss was a political scientist. So I used to joke that working for Mr. Price was like the best free grad school I could have ever asked for. It also meant I got memos back with like redlining, which I don't know if he'll see this at some point, but he'll chuckle. But it meant that we were constantly being asked, what did we do on this 3 years ago? This came up 5 years ago, reauthorizations, often on a 5-year cadence. What was the debate like back then? And Article One can give you answers about sort of what the context was, who was in the majority and minority, who the key players were. It helps paint that context bubble around decisions that were made in the past. So when your boss asks you, what did we do on this last time? Or the NDAA is up and you've got 600 amendments to sift through pretty much in real time, Article One can help you track what, if the same amendments came up previously, what your boss did on them, and more.
I'm sure appropriation staffers will be happy to hear that too.
Yes, and Mr. Price was an appropriator. He was a cardinal, so everyone on his policy team had an appropriations role. And we are very eager to get this tool to that committee and many others.
Very cool. Okay, so we had this conversation recently. I think it may have been with Corey Kramer from Center Forward, but she was talking about because staff turnover is so high on Capitol Hill right now, like we're losing a lot of institutional knowledge that gets passed down or held on to by staffers that stay for a while. And obviously there's still the PSMs who stay on the Hill for 10, 20 years, but this seems like a great solution to that, to kind of keep an office steady and understand what it's done in the past, even as there is staff turnover over time.
That's critically important. As you know, many congressional staff are underpaid. They're often just out of college or maybe have just gotten their graduate degree. And it can be hard to keep that institutional knowledge around, whether you're a House member or a senator. And part of the beauty of open data at the federal level is if you work in Senator X's office and you log into the platform knows that you work for Senator X. It overlays a lens, we call it, that basically makes sure that the information that's surfacing is concise, but that it also is relevant to your role as a staffer in Senator X's office. And that's one thing that differentiates us from a number of the legacy competitors as well as some of our newer competitors.
That's great. I wish this stuff existed when I was on the Hill.
Right. Me too.
I just would have loved to have had chat. I don't even need a lot, but just like being able to have something that remembers what you've done and to spit it out was just like never existed for our time, right? So
it didn't.
Thanks for being part of the solution there. What's the journey been like? So it's been 2 years. I know the founder journey can be. I always joke like I would never wish entrepreneurship on my worst enemy. Of just like it's chaos,
you've done it,
but
so
but it's like it's something I was called to do, and I'm willing to do it, but wouldn't wish it on anyone else unless they have that specific gene.
No, it is true. It's a slog. But the reality was that I and our team, we're a small team, 5 people, but everybody is excited about Article One.
Yeah.
We have combined between the current team and our advisory board more than 30 years of congressional experience.
Wow.
That domain expertise is really important, and knowing that we build a platform for policy professionals and not sort of for an industry or a vertical. So it's been 2 years of really, really hard work. And I think if my partner were here, she would mention that there's been some long days and some late nights. But the reality was that we knew we were onto something that would be helpful. And all of the feedback that we've gotten in early customer discovery from beta and pilot users early on has been really positive. And so that's kept us motivated.
Cool. Early on, or for a staffer who wants to go the entrepreneur route, make the jump, what advice would you give to them right now?
Do it. There's never been a better time to do it, first of all. AI has made entry into spaces that you may either be intimately familiar with but not quite sure where to go next, or you may be sort of on the periphery and have some basic familiarity with it but need to learn a lot more to be considered an entrepreneur or an expert in that field. And I would just say go for it. I think always keep in mind who you're building for. Keep in mind the pain points that you're trying to solve. And I'm thinking of it largely from a software perspective, but this applies for any entrepreneurial role. If you're trying to provide a product or a service, make sure that you've built it and tailored it to the people who will be using it. And that's something that I think you can learn the hard way. And look, we've had a few ideas that ended up not being great.
Only a few?
Yeah, well, okay, more than a few. But we also had some ideas that surprised us, where we took them to some early beta testers and said, like, would you guys use this? And overwhelmingly, the response was yes. And so we sort of ran with that.
For sure. I think it's so important to get user feedback, because some of the ideas we've had where I'm like, oh, this is the best one yet, just crash and burn. And then others where it's just like kind of an afterthought, oh yeah, let's try that, have been mainstays. So you never know. And like to what you said, start with an audience that you know extremely well and start small and go from there, but tailor it to them for sure.
Absolutely.
If I had Claude when I started my business, I would have saved so much time and money. So yeah, anyone who wants to build technology, like this is the perfect time to just use Claude Code, create an MVP, see if anyone likes it, and then you can worry about real development later. But
well, that and the distribution channels have also compressed.
Yeah.
They've gotten much simpler. It used to be that we would have to be in a massive studio somewhere, or in my case, I would have to have SaaS, business to business to customer, and a whole sales pipeline. And the reality is, we are running a business. At the end of the day, we do have a corporate structure, and we're a for-profit entity, but we can have a lot of fun in the process.
Yeah.
And I think that's been something that's kept us going.
Very cool. So you mentioned grad school. You mentioned like you felt like you got a grad degree on the hill. You go to grad school.
Yeah.
Would you recommend going back for some sort of degree for staffers who are considering that? Because we get a lot who ask that question.
I would, but I would make sure that it's not just a convenient next step, but that it actually is applicable to what you really want to do. And that doesn't always mean that you need to go pursue a graduate degree based on where you've been. It sort of also means you need to pursue a graduate degree based on where you like to go. Yeah. In my case, if I had not had Hill experience, really any professional experience, but Hill experience before going back to graduate school, I would not have benefited in the same way. And for some people, going straight through makes a lot of sense. May make sense financially, may make sense just where they are in their life trajectory. But I think, especially for people who have Hill experience that are looking to stay in the policy space, there is nothing better, even if it's a 4-month internship, just to get some exposure, to really do everything you can to ask questions of anybody who's willing to answer them, talk to anybody who's willing to get coffee with you. Yeah. That really helps inform that journey.
Very cool. So you have a lot of like Middle East policy background. Do you wish you were on the Hill right now working through all this stuff? Or are you glad to be off on your own?
A little bit of both. I guess it depends on the day. No, MENA, Middle East, North Africa, Middle East in particular is close to my heart. And there's obviously a lot going on in the world right now. But for me, for our team, it's exciting to be adjacent to that space because we know that the tools that we've built with Article One and that we're continuing to build, and we're starting federal right now, but we have plans in the near term to expand to states as well. We want to give people who are in those critical decision-making roles the tools that they need to be effective. And I think the only thing more dangerous than no plan at all is an ill-informed plan where you have limited information and you're making decisions that really have critical impacts without a full set of information.
So one thing you mentioned to us in the pre-call was just your time with Congressman Price and like how you came to love Congress and it as an institution and see the importance of it. Can you help us understand your thoughts there?
Sure. I mean, it's sort of in the name. Article One is, Article One, Constitution, legislative branch. For us, we're excited to be in that space because it's the branch that is closest to the people.
Yeah.
And that's not just a catchphrase, right? Like, it's Congress has gotten some dings on, favorability ratings and all that, but the reality is that what the institution of Congress is doing is critically important. And it always has been, and it always will be. We get a little bit concerned. We, as a company, we don't take policy positions, certainly not partisan policy positions. We're a totally nonpartisan company. We may in the future take a business-driven policy position. I'm not ruling that out. But what we do know is that there's just so many things at play at any given time that it's important for folks to have those tools.
I did have another question pop into my head though. As far as the future of AI, people are very doom and gloom about it right now and are painting it as the end of the world. Do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share on that, combat, agree with?
Look, I don't think that concern is misplaced at all. And there's a lot right now, both at the federal level and in states. There's a lot of debate around sort of where is the appropriate place to regulate something as new and as potentially, it's not potentially, it is literally changing the world. And it will do so in a permanent way. And where is it appropriate for that regulation to live, whether it's through statute, through a regulatory body? And as a company, we don't have a position on the best place for that.
No.
What we do see, and we value because we think it's effective, is for the people that are closest to the use case to understand the power of the tools, the potential of the tools, and the risks of the tools. And that's why we're excited that Congress, with Hit Paul 8 on the House side and similar measures on the Senate side, they've really done a lot of important work around those guardrails that we talked about earlier. I think for us, we want to make sure that the people that are making those decisions, again, have the tools that they need to make them. I'm confident that there's going to be some trial and error. There's going to be some growing pains. We've already seen it. There's a viral video, I think just a few days ago, of a food delivery robot crashing through a bus stop, glass pane. But in our space, that's why it's so important to have that verifiable information, why it's so important to assure our users, not just here verbally, but literally in our foundational privacy and data policies, that we're not using their data to train. Yeah. There's a lot of important decisions. Even though we're not in the classified space right now in Congress, there's a lot of pre-decisional information. There's a lot of deliberative information that our foreign adversaries would love to have. And so we've also highlighted and really prioritized security early on. And I think all of what I just mentioned will help ease people's mind to an extent, but the reality is that getting in, using the tools, becoming comfortable with them, and asking the hard questions about them is by far the best way to do this.
Yeah, I think there's a lot we still have to learn about AI as far as how to regulate, and I think it's going to take some time because staffers have to catch up with all of that. I want to talk about the campaign side of work you've done too.
Yeah.
Before you went to the Hill, being in Iowa for John Edwards, like what's that like? I know Iowa's technically not the first ballot casting measure, right? Is it? Or is New
It's a
Hampshire?
caucus state, but it's no longer
Okay.
first. And yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of
I guess
a lot of movement there.
It was first at the time.
Yes, it
Okay,
was.
cool. All right. It's been 4 years since I've been on the Hill. I'm in a different world these days.
It's a changing landscape.
But nonetheless, when you were in Iowa, tell us about it, because everyone thinks about Iowa when they think about the beginning of a presidential campaign.
Sure. Well, the first thing I'll say, being from North Carolina, we have a lot of pride in our state, my home state. But Iowa is a damn fine place. And I'm not saying that to sound cheesy, but I felt right at home. I had many people not only invite me for dinner, but like assume I was going to stay for dinner, which was awesome. On the campaign side, it was a lot of long days for very, very minimal pay. You weren't there because you were planning to like start a 401k. You were there because you believed in your candidate. You believed in the candidate's message. And in my case, there was the concept of two Americas. And I think that actually, despite however that campaign may have ended out and what's happened in the intervening, almost 20 years, I think that message actually still resonates. And in fact, we've seen it resurface recently in a way that I would really credit Mr. Edwards with as having sort of broken ground there. But on the campaign trail, it's no 2 days are alike. I mean, there's a lot of repetition. There's a lot of call time, right? You're constantly calling potential caucus goers or voters in a primary state. And you're having to, it's not always comfortable. You're sort of calling people right in the middle of dinner hour. And especially in a place like Iowa where people prioritize family and community, that can feel pretty jarring. Yeah. And so that took a little getting used to. But the reality was that people, especially in an early state like Iowa, and I know this is not a new concept, but they were so informed about the issues that it made someone who was excited about policy like me just right at home, because you would go in, you would knock on a door, didn't always get the warmest reception, but in many cases, someone wanted to have a 45-minute debate about a policy position that your boss, your candidate had just released a few days prior. And so it was important to be read up on that. Yeah. But it was also a lot of fun. And one of my very best friends, and actually works for the company now, he's based in New York as we're looking to expand into that area, is someone I met on the campaign.
Very cool.
So lifelong connections.
Would you recommend it to others?
I absolutely would, without question. Things have changed a little bit too, even just from 2007, 2008. Facebook was still pretty new at that point, which is crazy. So things feel a little bit different now. I haven't been active on a campaign. We do have some folks on our team who live and breathe that every cycle. But I would absolutely recommend it. I would make sure that, get your annual wellness check beforehand, because you're going to be eating a lot of cheeseburgers if you're a cheeseburger person. And basically plan to sort of not do anything else important for the full cycle. Because one thing about that opportunity, and it's not unique to campaigns, but I think it's sort of magnified on campaigns, is you're going to have unexpected opportunities that come at you almost every single day. And not only will you be able to take advantage of them, you're sort of expected to take advantage of them. And it can be baptism by fire in many ways in the political space. But I would absolutely recommend it.
Very cool. On the personal side of things, I know you get wrapped up a lot in entrepreneurship these days, but who are you outside of your work?
I'm Jackson. I mean, my partner and I, Sarah, live in Arlington. She's been there for, I think, 10 years. I've been there for 3 years. Before that, I lived in D.C. for about 13 years. We try to get out of work whenever we can, not shirk it, but step back, which can be hard. I mean, as you guys know, in a city like D.C., it can be pretty hard to, even at a happy hour, you're going to run into someone who wants to talk shop.
For sure.
So we make a point to spend time together, to spend time outside, especially as the weather's getting nicer. I plan to walk down and look at the boats after this.
There you go.
So that's a lot of work. Running a company is not easy, but we're finding ways to make sure that we're taking a breather from time to time.
How do you recommend the staffer who spends most of their day working? How do you separate? What are some things you found to be helpful to center yourself or remove yourself?
So I would answer that by actually saying this is something that's valuable both in the workplace and outside the workplace, which is go proactively expose yourself to alternative points of view. So my first week on Capitol Hill, it was August 2007, or 2008, excuse me, was the financial crisis. And I remember Congressman Price bursting back through the front office door. I was a staff assistant, and asking what the Dow was doing. And I was like, I don't know, let me Google it. But that was an important sort of moment where a lot changed on the Hill. It was just within a couple of years that you had the Affordable Care Act debates. You had the emergence of the Tea Party. You had a lot of people that were fundamentally losing trust in the institutions of government because of what had just transpired.
For sure.
And we went from an environment where it wasn't only, it was just assumed you were going to interact across the aisle, especially coming from a purple state like North Carolina. Our delegation was very, very diverse politically. But there were receptions all the time. We would go to happy hours that were, the North Carolina delegation as a whole, not just the Dems or the Republicans. And I worry a little bit that in the intervening years that has gone away. Some of it was a necessary, cleaning house a little bit after the financial crisis, making sure that, moneyed interests were not hosting people for inappropriate junkets and things like that. I think that's important. We saw a lot of reform on the earmark side, the congressionally directed spending side, although I think Congress realized pretty quickly that if you do that, a lot of what you're doing is abdicating the authority and the power of the purse to the executive. And I think that a continuing reliance on CRs, which we could spend a whole other podcast on, has been a good example of that. So I would say expose yourself to differing points of view, and make sure that you're taking opportunities to really listen to what other people are saying, and turn the TV off from time to time, because it is just an echo chamber.
For sure. Absolutely. Is there anything else you want to impart on the audience before we go?
Have fun doing what you're doing. I mean, it's clear that you do. It's clear that your team does. My team does, I think, most of the time. They'll correct me if I'm wrong when this airs. But we're really excited to have learned this week that we are the first dedicated AI native policy intelligence platform that's been approved for use in the House of Representatives, and therefore in Congress. Thank you. We're very excited for that. And we know there are other generalized AI tools out there that have been in the space for a little while, but we're very excited by the path ahead.
Nice. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for letting me be here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into Capital Spotlight Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe to our channels to stay updated on new releases, share the show with your friends, and rate the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. For more from Connect, subscribe to our daily newsletters, follow us on social media, and check out our website, all at Capital Connect, capital with an O, CNCT. See you next time.